Rheneas was delighted to be home from his overhaul. He felt like a brand new engine and was eager to get back to work as soon as possible. The thin controller had wanted him to rest his wheels for a long time, but he couldn't contain the gallant old engine in his shed for very long, so he let him out to pull passengers. The passengers and coaches were delighted to see him again, and he spent the next few weeks taking their trains up and down the line, whistling to any engine that passed. The other engines all had a great respect for Rheneas and would whistle back as loud as they could. One evening, the thin controller came to see his engines. A large order of slate has been ordered from the mainland. I need an engine to man the slate trains for the next while. Any volunteers? Pick me, sir, peeped Rheneas loudly. As happy as I am with my passenger trains, I'd love the opportunity to work with trucks again. My, an engine who wants to work with trucks? Shame the same can't be said for the others, teased Peter Sam. Duncan and Sir Handel blushed and looked at their buffers. Very well, Rheneas. You'll be working up at the Incline tomorrow morning. I'll have Skarloey take your passenger trains in the meantime, said the thin controller. Then he turned and walked away. Ho, looks like I'm back to covering your trains again, Rheneas, chuckled Skarloey. Rheneas laughed too and fell happily asleep, excited for a change of pace the next day. The following morning, Rheneas took a load of empties up the line. He kept the trucks in order as he scurried up to the incline. When they arrived at the incline, Rheneas was uncoupled from the trucks so that he could run round and shunt them onto the incline line. As he began to move away from his trucks, he noticed a workman struggling to pull a switch lever. Everything all right, mate? Called Rheneas' driver. Just fine, thanks, groaned the workman, his face now as red as Rheneas' paint. He hadn't noticed that a rock had lodged itself in the switch, causing the mechanism to jam. Rheneas had plenty of experience up at the incline and spotted the problem right away. Excuse me, there seems to be a rock jammed in the switch, he said softly. The workman looked down and spotted it. He was very embarrassed and quickly removed it. Thank you, he said quietly to Rheneas. The old engine smiled at him. Not a problem. Are you new here? Asked Rheneas kindly. Yes, I am. It's my first week and I'm still learning the ropes. My name is Paul, smiled the workman. Pleasure to meet you, Paul, said Rheneas cheerfully as he ran round his trucks and buffered up behind them. It's nice to finally meet you. I grew up beside your railway and would watch you and Skarloey pass with your trains all day. I'm glad you've come home, smiled Paul. Thank you. I'm glad to be home too. You take care now, Paul, peeped Rheneas. But I'm sorry to say that Paul didn't take care. He was a young man and was rather inexperienced when it came to railway practices. He had only been briefly shown how to operate the switches and how to hand-shunt trucks. Poor Paul spent the next few weeks struggling to move the trucks by hand, sending Rheneas down the wrong sidings and even derailing some wagons. By the end of the month, Paul had received quite an earful from the incline manager. We cannot afford any delays, not with an order this important. If you make another mistake, I'll have to give you the sack. Rheneas felt sorry for poor Paul. He wanted to help him, but he didn't know how. He told the other engines all about Paul that night. Poor fella, sighed Rusty. I wish there was something I could do to help him, puffed Rheneas. Best thing you can do is stay out of his way, said Duncan gruffly. You'll cause less trouble if you're not around. Rheneas pondered on this. He wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do, but nobody else had presented any other ideas. The next day, Rheneas was pulling a long line of empties up to the incline. He was still thinking about Paul. When he arrived, he looked around, but there was no sign of Paul. Oh no, poor Paul has been sacked. The gallant old engine felt most dismayed as he shunted his trucks. We better fill up on water, old boy, said his driver. Rheneas puffed sadly over to the water tower. Not even a refreshing drink would lift his spirits. Cheer up, Rheneas, said his driver. Sometimes we all have to learn the hard way. I'm sure Paul will find another job. I suppose, hummed Rheneas. Soon the loaded trucks had been carried down to the bottom of the incline. They were waiting impatiently for Rheneas to collect them. Rheneas was distracted and wasn't paying attention. He never whistled for the points to be changed to the incline line. He was now backing towards the line of empties. "Look out!" cried a voice. "Blimey!" cried his driver as he spotted they were heading towards the empties. "Oh!" cried Rheneas, but it was too late. Rheneas hit the empties with an almighty biff. The first truck had come off the rails and the others were rather shaken. "Are you all right?" called the voice. Rheneas peered over and gasped. "Paul," he peeped. "You're all right." "Never mind me. Are you all right? What happened?" asked Paul again. But before Rheneas could answer, the incline manager stormed over. "I warned you, Paul. I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to let you go." "Please, sir, it wasn't Paul's fault. It was mine," interrupted Rheneas quickly. He explained how he was worried about Paul and had become distracted. "I'm touched that you'd worry about me so much, Rheneas," smiled Paul. He turned to the incline manager. "If it's all right with you, sir, I'd like to resign." The incline manager and Rheneas were most surprised, but Paul had made up his mind. However, he didn't stray too far from the railway. A few weeks later, Rheneas awoke one morning to find Paul in his cab. "Paul? What are you doing here? Are you my new driver?" Paul chuckled. "Heavens, no. I'm your firelighter now. The work at the incline just wasn't for me. Now I get to see you in the other engines every morning." And so, Paul worked as the engine's firelighter for the next few years. He'd always come early to talk with the engines and get them ready for the day ahead. Although some complained of favoritism, Paul always stoked up Rheneas first each morning, just as his way of showing his gratitude to the gallant old engine.